how many times will an elite tennis player cramp out of every 1,000 hours?
That's lower than I thought it would be.
Prioritise the match, or do you prioritise physical health? Some theories suggest it's actually stress related. If there are many ways in which it could occur, if there's nothing that we can nail down as the reason, then that means that management of the risk of cramping needs to be multifaceted.
Consistent, correct hydration. So yeah, just taking those little sips, trying to just get into the habit every time you change ends. I do this, I do something else, stretch my toes, whatever, and then I go to the other side. Welcome back to the Getting a Grip podcast. Today we are talking about the dreaded cramps, something that you might have experienced during a match or maybe even during a training session. We're going to talk about ways in why it happens and ways in which we can prevent it. And Merlin's going to ask me in the normal question format. Have you experienced cramps lately, or has it been a while for you?
Oh, it's been a while for me. I've got a pretty good regime. Like now I understand it quite well, that it's something that I don't really get, and that's exactly what I realised. I think that people can probably benefit from is the information we have on how we avoid it, and now it never happens to me. Is something that I think a lot of people will gain improvement from, because when it used to happen to me, it used to be like I was shot in the leg, and it would definitely hurt for a few days after. So. Cramps for me were always a horrible thing, so it's definitely something that's worth avoiding.
All right, let's jump into it.
Yeah, of course. I thought this would be nice because we've got a lot of niggles in tennis. So, this is one of a set of different episodes that we're going to try and do to try and bring some information, but also advice to help people through their tennis journey. Because obviously I'm all about, medical research in my day-to-day job. And I thought, it'd be quite cool to marry some of this knowledge that I have just sitting in the back of my head to the way that we play tennis. But anyway, today we're on cramps. What I'd like to do is start off with a little question about the instance. So, seeing how often cramping can actually happen. So my question to you is, a study found for tennis players that for every 1,000 hours played, and I'm going to ask you what the statistic this study found is, what I want to know, how many times will an elite tennis player cramp out of every 1,000 hours?
Jeez.
So a study found that out of 1,000 hours, elite tennis players cramped on average this many times. And your four options are 0.9, 1.2, 1.5, and 10. And bear in mind, they're decimal points simply because it's an average across a lot of people.
I was going to say,
you can't cramp 0.2 times, but still.
So tell me, it didn't feel like a full cramp, but it was like, sort of 0.9 of a cramp. It's kind of almost there.
Well, all right, if you want to do it that way, that's fine. But...
All right, okay. Out of 1,000, how long? 1,000 hours was it?
So 1,000 hours out of every 1,000 hours played, elite tennis players will cramp how many times? And that is 0.9, 1.2, 1.5, or 10.
Well, there's one answer that's capturing my attention there. I think 1,000 hours is a long time. But then again, you also tend to get drawn to the incidents where it's happened. So maybe from that perspective, I'm thinking it's happened more than it actually has. Such a general statistic. It's kind of, is this like in a particular
country,
or is it just across everything? Maybe I'm asking too many detailed questions.
Yeah, that's a great question. The study wasn't so clear, but I'm pretty sure it was based on United States tennis players. But really, in terms of international tennis, the knowledge of something like cramping is about the same, and the incidences don't really change much.
Okay, well, I'm going to go for the seemingly rogue answer, which was 10.
Oh, well, you need to get a grip. Because unfortunately the answer was 1.2. So yes, for every 1,000 hours, elite tennis players on average will cramp 1.2 times. So you're probably thinking 1,000 hours, that's a lot of tennis. And for a little over the number of one, that's actually not many times.
Yeah, I'm trying to break it down into like how many matches that is, or how many training sessions that is. Because, maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours for a training session or a match, if you just kind of take an easy number. So then that's...
If you say 2 hours, that's 500 matches.
Yeah. So basically one every 500 matches, if we're talking sort of... Yeah, in a more easily understandable way. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Would you say that... How do you interpret that? Is that a lot to you? Or is that... that's lower than I thought it would be.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to sort of point out with this answer, is that's actually really low. So if you're thinking about elite tennis players have all the knowledge. They have all the option for, how they can prevent it and how they can manage avoiding it, how they can treat it when it happens so that it's not very severe. They have all the power they can in the world to limit it. And they will only get it pretty much once every 500 matches or so. I think that's pretty good. I think that's really low. And what I would like to say is, if you're experiencing this, say, you're coming into tennis, you're a beginner, maybe you're an intermediate, maybe you've been playing quite a bit, you're loving your tennis, and you're seemingly getting these cramps happening sort of every 2 weeks or so. It's not severe, it's just something that's that niggle in your calf, or something like that you find you just can't avoid. If that's happening every 2 weeks, then we know we can help you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's leading into another question, but how many times, how much more likely it is to happen as a club or recreational player versus that? And I reckon it's going to be of the order of maybe even 20 to 50 times that, maybe even more. It's like the occurrence rate. Yeah. So there's a lot of... I would say
it's very high. Again, I see it all the time. And I feel like I shouldn't see it all the time. Like, for me, it never happens anymore because I know how to avoid it. Whereas when it used to happen, I was always just like, I don't really understand this. What is this? It's not like I've not come down on my calf weird or anything like that. It's just something that happens. Okay, so we're going to move on to question number 2. And it's a really simple question. And this is something that you should get right. Don't laugh. You'll be fine. Can you, and I mean you plurally, can you play on with cramp? And you've got 3 options for this answer. Yes, no, we don't know.
Ooh.
And by we don't know, I mean the research community doesn't know whether you should or shouldn't.
Well, my initial kind of gut feeling was yes. You can't, if you literally interpret it, you're like, yes, I can carry on. But is that going to make things a lot worse?
Do you want me to rephrase the question? Should you play on with cramp? Yes, no, or we don't know.
Well, it's an easy answer for me. I don't know, so I'm going to go with we don't know.
Are you sure? Is that your final answer?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because
okay.
I feel like on one hand, I may be risking injury in some way, but on the other hand, I've played before when I've had it, and I've kind of managed it a little bit, but again, it's not optimal. Yeah. So I'm kind of on one hand, yes, but not ideal. So with a lack of knowledge of the research, then I would just say we don't know.
Okay, so for this quiz, my answer...
I know what it's going to be now.
You need to get a grip.
It's gonna be no.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
So what I will say is, and I don't want to give too much away from future questions, but what I will say is there's one thing that we know 100%, and that is, even with a cramp, a lot of the time it is severe enough that it could cause injury in the future. Now, if you're a professional tennis player, that injury risk might be lower because you know how to prevent yourself from getting injuries from cramps, or these cramps are happening, right at the clutch moment in a match, right at the end. You always see this. It's just like, oh, he's having treatment for a cramp at 4-all in the final set. Oh, the guys come on the court, he's rubbing his leg and all that sort of stuff. Realistically, you shouldn't play on, because it's better that you avoid that injury to yourself in the future, because you don't know if it will create something worse. However, equally, it might be more important to you to win that match. So, yeah, it is weighing it up. However, really the advice should be, no, look after your body.
Yeah, even if you've got the tools in place to manage it like they do at the top level with, I don't know, physio coming out and plus all the hydration and those sort of things, even then you shouldn't carry on. That's the blanket kind of recommendation. Realistically,
if you're in a semi-final of Wimbledon, for example, there's about, 500,000 or something or more than that on the line for that match. So you're probably going to carry on, aren't you?
But if I'm playing my local match, what if there might be £10 on the line? Come on, I'm not giving that up easily.
Precisely. Well, again, it's up to you. Like, each person is best placed to make personal decisions regarding their own, health, for example, but also their own sporting ability and recovery and all of that sort of stuff. Realistically, if you're playing like practice or you're just, hitting or something like that, yeah, give it a rest. See if you can warm it up, see if you can get back on and it feels loose again, and that's fine. A bit of stretching, something like that would be fine. However, realistically, yeah, you shouldn't really play past that.
Okay. Well, that leads us on to whatever the next thing is.
This leads us on to question number 3. And interestingly, question number 3 is a little interesting in the sense that I wanted to work out for everyone. Basically, when you see it on TV, you see people carry on. Obviously, you see all these professional tennis players carry on. When I've just told you, you probably shouldn't. So, what my question is in pro tennis matches, how many times can a player throughout a match officially be treated for cramp with medical intervention? So that's the question. And you've got 4 answers. 0, 1, 2, or 3 times.
I feel like this is something that would have... I don't know. In that Alcaraz-Djokovic match, it was heat stroke, wasn't it? It wasn't cramps. I'm trying to think of a recent instance when it's come up. Oh, it must have happened in the US Open at some point because it was so hot as well. I'm torn between like 1 and 2. I'm going to go with 1. I'm feeling
final answer.
Yes, but I don't like the way you've said that.
Well, it's because you need to get a grip. Unfortunately, the answer was 2, so you should have gone with 2.
I feel like that's too lenient.
Yeah. So, well, that's your answer. So each player is allowed to be treated in a pro match twice for cramp throughout that match. There is one stipulation, and that is that it can only be done at a change of ends. So obviously, in terms of a match, they don't deem it a severe enough injury that you're allowed immediate medical intervention. It has to be at change of ends, for example. Because again, a lot of us have played on with cramp, played on feeling that niggle, that tightness, and maybe that sudden pull, and it's been fine. And you'll keep going. You're maybe not at your best level, but you're still able to play. So that's part of the reason why that's there. But at the same time, what do we feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously from my answer, I feel like it's a little bit lenient, but because in my head, I'm thinking they should really be putting everything in place to manage it. And especially when you say, I guess, yeah, there's such a low likelihood of it happening. Maybe that's an argument for being more lenient because it doesn't actually happen that often. I don't know. You could probably look at it both ways in that respect. But Yeah, in reality, it's not, in my head, it's not like a sudden twinge of a muscle or something where it's like, yeah, you're going to need more time to sort that out and a little bit more lenience. So I think, I don't know, now I'm kind of questioning it, actually, whether I'm being too harsh with one. Because again, if it is like super hot conditions, sweaty conditions, then I might be inclined to be more lenient with 2. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, personally, I'm on the side of the players who have a ridiculous schedule on the tour, and probably need whatever they can in order to help them prevent a cramp becoming a serious injury. Because really, a cramp's not what we call a serious problem, but it could lead to that. Hence why, in my opinion, my advice would be, okay, if you get a cramp, either start to wind down playing that day, or or stop playing in that moment. But like I say, it does depend. My leaning is always towards the health, but it's a bit more opinion based because it's not so severe. So it depends what you prioritize. Do you prioritize the match, or do you prioritize physical health? So it's
And then there's that whole kind of argument of how do you are people taking advantage of it as well at certain points?
And then there's that as well. Yes. Yeah, because there's no physical signs of cramp. You could literally just say, "Oh, I've got cramp," and people are okay. Like you can't test that. I think you can test that based on like how tight the muscle is, but if it's a little cramp, then you're not really going to feel it because it could be more internal. For example, with calves as well, it often is. It's the inside calf muscle rather than the one that's on the exterior. So
I suppose
it's a tricky one.
That's an argument you could probably make for a lot of injuries. People could be somewhat feigning it. So yeah, I suppose
a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
Anywho, let's move on. Question 4. Now we get into the nitty gritty. I want to know, why do we cramp? And I've got 4 answers for you. Answer number 1, inadequate stretching. Answer number 2 for why we cramp, is it dehydration? Answer number 3, is it loss of electrolytes? And answer number 4, we don't actually know. And again, I mean that by the research community doesn't actually know what causes cramps.
Questioning myself here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think it's the first one. Although, I mean, I can be pretty tight at times, but yeah, I don't think that's the cause for me. Yeah, I'm obviously drawn to the electrolytes one because, just from observational analysis or whatever you want to call it, you notice players struggling more with cramps when either towards the end of a match, not even just in tennis, like in football, it happens a lot. If it goes to extra time, then you start seeing higher incidence of cramp. And obviously hot conditions as well.
Uh-huh.
But then you say we don't know. Because I always feel like with a science-based question, there's always debate. There's almost always debate over something.
There is always debate.
Yeah. I'm just gonna stick with my gut. I'm gonna go with loss of electrolytes from the muscle.
Okay. I'm not going to say get a grip. Because the real answer is that all of the answers are correct.
Ooh.
I would argue that the last answer is more correct. If you look at all of the research that is done out there on cramps across all sports, specifically tennis as well, we don't actually know. We don't really know what causes tennis. There is nothing that is significantly associated properly in terms of, the numbers of when we do these studies with why we get cramp. I would probably see dehydration and loss of electrolytes, that really those two are the same answer as well, because hydration is not just about how much water you take on, it's also about the salt balance that you have with that water as well within your body. So that's probably the key thing that seems to be altering it. That seems to be the key thing that helps people manage it. but really we don't actually know. And some theories suggest it's actually stress related. And if you are at a heightened level of stress, mentally or physically, then that stress goes to your nerves in your muscles. And when your muscles are working, obviously at the more extreme end of their function, where you're playing tennis, for example, and really sudden stops and really fast starts, then it can also cause cramps there because the nerves are effectively stressed at the ends in those muscles, which then causes,
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, I think when I had it, like I mean, last year when I was in England and we were playing a doubles match, and I cramped like really badly in the tie break at the end, like in my hamstring, I think it was. And it was definitely like a fairly stressful match. Although I feel like I've had other stressful matches. Maybe it's a combination, like it's the length and the prolonged stress. Maybe it's that rather than just like an acute stress thing. Yeah, that's an interesting point. But yeah, for sure, hydration comes into it as well. But then hydration also kind of links into you feeling not just cramps in the kind of common muscles like, the calf or the hamstring, but like, stomach issues as well. I feel like that also links into it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, big time. It's also why I would argue you get physical stress if you say overeat and you're feeling quite full. You'll get physical stress from feeling full, which could also lead to cramps. And you're thinking, oh, there's loads of salts floating around my body, and I've just eaten loads and drunk loads with it. Then I should be okay. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. There are better ways to manage it, but that physical stress could theoretically lead to cramping, for example. But this is the point. I could say anything right now that theoretically could lead to cramping. I could go down a logical chain because we don't actually know what causes cramping. Obviously, we have inklings. There's ideas. Okay, that's probably more likely. And we've noticed that when that's not right, cramping incidence increases. But I'm imagining that it's probably a multifaceted. There are many ways in which cramping can occur. And that's the important thing to remember. If there are many ways in which it could occur, if there's nothing that we can nail down as the reason, then that means that management of the risk of cramping needs to be many ways and multifaceted. However, they're all very easy things to do. And that brings us to our final question, which we will discuss. We will give you all the fixes and tips for cramping. But our final question is, what is the best way to avoid cramps? And I want you to highlight the word best here. Answer number 1, consistent hydration. Answer number 2, no food before a match. Answer number 3, stretching. And answer number 4, don't play tennis.
Sorry, what was the question again?
What is the best way to avoid cramps? Consistent hydration, no food before a match, stretching, or don't play tennis?
Or just don't play. Yeah. Well, if you don't play, you can't have the benefits, and there's always a pros and cons to everything. So, you got to have fun, but you got to risk injury. Our tennis podcast host, everybody. Oh, jeez. Don't bother, guys. It's just not worth it. Why do we do this to ourselves? No, 100% it's worth it. Especially if it doesn't happen that often. But yeah, like obviously when you play any sport, you're going to risk not just cramps, but, different kinds of injuries, which we will talk about as well. Mm-hmm. So that's it. You got to move, like going outside and like walking across the road, I'm risking getting run over, for example. So there's risks everywhere. I don't know why.
I thought you were going to say risking cramps. I thought you were going to go going outside, walking across the road. Oh, I'm risking a cramp. I didn't think you were going to say risking dying. Wow.
Am I wrong?
Okay. This has taken an evil turn.
Extreme analogy, but it's there's a risk to everything, isn't there? So, but those other methods that you mentioned obviously will also help, which I think is what you're going to explain anyway.
Well, I need you to give me your answer.
Oh, my answer was not playing.
Your answer is not playing from our tennis podcast host. Oh, God.
Well, if you're just saying not risking cramping, then yeah.
Okay. That is definitely incorrect. So you need to get a grip. So playing tennis is not the only way you can get cramps, Ben.
Yeah, obviously not. But like, you were saying out of those options.
Yeah, out of those options. So out of those options, research has provided this answer. So we don't really know what causes cramping, but what we do know for a fact is consistent hydration does prevent it. So this is one of the things that pros are very, very good at. They make sure on the change of ends, they sit down, they have their drink. Maybe they'll stretch their toes a little bit. Maybe they'll, stretch out a leg that feels a little bit tight, for example, something that they're thinking, maybe a cramp could happen, in those latter stages of a match. But ultimately, they're getting that consistent hydration. We've all seen the tennis players have a bite of banana. That's for the potassium. Nice, a little electrolyte boost. We've all seen them have a drink. Then they've always got their clear water, and they've always got their cloudy, yellowy drink, which is ultimately sugar and salt. So it's important to remember, obviously, consistent hydration, best way to avoid it. You've seen the incidents that tennis players have of cramp, okay, once every 500 matches, for example. That's pretty low. I'm happy with those odds. Those are very good. In which case, I would say that that's probably quite a good method of prevention. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, it's the correct hydration, right? Consistent, correct hydration, right? Or appropriate hydration.
Yes.
So, yeah, again, I think we mentioned this on a previous episode. It's sipping like regularly, but it's also, well, obviously depends also on the conditions. So you're going to be taking on more if it's a little bit hotter, a little bit more humid, and then having the balance of the potassium, the sodium, the sugar, all of that together, not just sipping water, because that's, if anything, that might make it worse doing that. So because it alters the balance, right? If you're then putting more water into your system, talking about, I don't know, osmosis or the balance of electrolytes. So it's the consistent, correct hydration. So just taking those little sips, trying to just get into the habit every time you change ends. I do this, I do something else, stretch my toes or whatever, and then I go to the other side. Just habit.
Because it doesn't take very long. It doesn't take very long. And my important thing as well is it's not just for a match. That's for when you train. That's for when you have a hit with someone and you're just enjoying yourself for an hour and a half. Okay, well, after half an hour, your body's actually not doing too well because tennis is very intense as a sport goes. It's very specific in terms of how it depletes your hydration and your electrolytes, for example, because of the type of exercise it is. That sort of short interval, and really tough on the muscles as well because of all that lateral movement. So it is very important that, you don't need to set yourself a strict regime. You don't need to be like every 5 minutes, on 5 minutes, I'm going to have a sip of water, a sip of my electrolyte juice, and a bite of banana. So I don't know why I turned into Richard Iowati there. But the point being is, as long as you keep it regular and minimal, then it's all good, because you don't want to be gulping something down either, because then you start to feel kind of full with liquid, and that's no good either. So it's not much, but it's regular and consistent, and that's the important thing. And that's the best way to avoid cramps. Among other things, we can come to this in other episodes, but among other things, that is a great, great way to keep yourself happy on court. However, the other answers aren't wrong. Not playing tennis, you were right. It will reduce your incidence of cramp. But cramp is something that could happen at any point throughout your life. So even if you don't play tennis, I don't know why you'd be listening to us if you don't play tennis. Maybe you're interested in playing tennis, actually. I don't know. But if you don't play tennis, you might get cramps from something else if you are not consistently hydrated. Hence why the hydration is the best answer here, because it's something that anyone can do no matter what they do in terms of physical exercise. No food before a match, I'd say that's just good. I mean, you can eat before a match. Not a massive stir fry on a pizza. The pizza stir fry.
But
and then the answer of Oh no.
Go on. No, I'm not going to say, but maybe one slice. One slice is fine.
One slice would probably be all right.
Noodles on top.
Yeah. Oh god, that sounds like a horribly carby meal. But stretching as well is also a good method of prevention. But there's not really any evidence that specifically stops cramps. But I always feel like it does something. I always feel like stretching is a good idea because it's just trying to keep your muscles supple and keep them in a place where they're ready to be dynamically moved. So, yeah, always important. But yeah, stay on that hydration.
Yeah, I think the stretching, even if it just relaxes you, right? That's also a benefit of it. Like we would say,
also
stress,
a good thing, yeah.
Like if the stress contributes to cramp, then just stretching to like relax could help as well. And also just trying to reduce actual muscular injury, not even just cramp.
Yeah,
that's where the stretching is also going to help long term. Obviously, we're not trying to do the splits like Novak does pretty much on every running shot that he hits, but a little bit of range.
Maybe you're not trying to do the splits like Novak does.
I've tried. I've given up.
I don't even think I can make my fingers split that much. So I don't know how he does.
Just remember to stay hydrated. There's one thing you take away. It's that don't make the mistake that I did last week when I played, and I forgot to bring like a isotonic drink, and I just had water, and I didn't cramp, but I was like had no energy. I had nothing in after the first set. I was just absolutely dead. Felt horrible. So even just to feel good, it's also beneficial to do that.
And it's so small, isn't it? It's not like you're eating an entire pizza halfway through a match in order to give yourself the energy. You don't need much. You just need enough to keep that balance throughout the match, because the balance is disrupted by playing something intense like tennis. Doesn't matter how you play tennis, it's intense. Even if you stand there and just swing your arms, it's intense because it's a different type of exercise to any other that I know.
Yeah. And it gives you an excuse to have a sweet drink. So there you go.
Yeah.
You can actually,
like,
there's a benefit of having a sweet drink. There we go. Let us know, what methods you guys use. Anything else maybe that you find helpful, let us know. And yeah, if you've enjoyed the episode, found it useful, give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And obviously follow on the podcast platforms. And we will see you in the next one.